Today is a day of both the greatest challenge to our Christian heritage, but also the greatest opportunity to reach peoples and nations who don't know the good news of Jesus Christ. Almost every country of the world has a high demand for learning the global language of our day, English. This language is a heritage from God, and this video shows how we can use that gift to spread the good news to the unreached peoples of the world. It shows how all kinds of ordinary men and women have quickly and easily gained an internationally recognized qualification to teach English as a foreign language. This qualification has provided them with opportunities to serve countries and individuals in those countries who would otherwise be inaccessible. Could you do the same?
At the request of church leaders out in Hungary, we took a team of 18 to Eastern Hungary to run a language camp, and during that time we had 22 students with us. 18 and 19 of them were non-Christians, but by the end of 2 weeks of having a lot of fun and teaching them English, all but one of those 18 had given their lives over to the Lord.
Without teaching, of course, I couldn't pick up the language. And it's not only the language, but maybe I couldn't have chance to begin a Christian. And that's for me, now, I couldn't imagine that if I didn't come and have these lessons and have this language I learned and begin a Christian, I couldn't imagine how life could be.
And when they came to the Lord, it was really good, because if they came to the Lord really and effectively, and many did, then they would go to their dormitory, and before the end of the week, the whole dormitory would be Christians. It was absolutely fantastic.
The needs of the world seem so great. I'm nobody special. How could I go and make a difference for God?
I quickly discovered that what doors were closed to missionary work were wide open to English teachers. So it just sparked my own imagination of the possibilities of sending people all around the world to teach English.
English language teaching is a great way to build a bridge into a local community. Generally, people really respect teachers, so if you go to a country as a teacher, you have a platform from which to speak to them. People in a country understand you're there as a teacher, they understand what that means, and they can relate to you as a teacher. And then as a teacher, you get lots of opportunities to build friendships with your students and also with the local members of staff.
Our teachers have gone to all continents, from South America to the Far East, to Mongolia, to North America, Africa, India, China, you name it. There's a TEFL teacher that's gone from International Training Network to that country. We've trained over 900 teachers, so you can imagine that a large proportion of those are scattered all over the world, some of them in pretty sensitive countries.
At the moment, there's a huge demand in China for more language teaching. There are thousands of opportunities.
It is an automatic entry. Those in government over us know and want English. They don't know that we are Christians. We cannot go in blazing Jesus, but we can work in the classroom and in the home.
And also we're part of the society. We're woven into the fabric of their life. And again, that opens up possibilities for very fruitful relationships with Arabs there, where we can sensitively share our lives with them.
You can teach from grammar books, you can teach from books of any description, but they actually need to hear the spoken language, and it's only we native speakers who have that and can impart it.
Could I become a teacher for God? What would it be like? How long would it take, and how much would it cost?
I think to be a good language teacher, it's quite important that you have that you're a caring person, someone who can identify with other people. Of course, you have to be a good communicator, and you have to be someone who can think on your toes as well.
It's quite easy for people to become English language teachers. You don't even need a university degree. In fact, a minimum requirement is education up to the age of 18, and then you can take a short, intensive special training program that gives you a certificate in teaching English to speakers of the other languages.
We accept people on an interview basis, so we thoroughly assess a person's ability to be able to, one, be a teacher, and two, their understanding of English. And we've had people who have very minimal qualifications do the course and be very successful.
Do a proper course. It's going to give you some of the skills that you can take in a classroom. Yes, you've got the language, you can communicate, but they want more. They want people who can actually teach English language in the schools.
There's no other qualification that I know of where you can get it in 5 weeks, which will give you an international recognition around the globe. There's not a country that we know of that does not accept the qualification that's on offer.
So, if I become a teacher for God, how can I develop in my new career?
There's positions like the Assistant Director of Studies or Director of Studies where you're getting into academic management. As well as that, there's the possibility of teacher training.
And so in the space of 12 months from training, I'm already director of the entire education projects out there. So it's a huge responsibility, and I'm totally inexperienced, but I find that God is really providing in quite amazing ways.
But I couldn't become a teacher. I have my career to think about. Or could I?
Well, I'm actually trained as a civil engineer and was very much involved in local government work. My wife and I decided we really wanted to get involved in something more than just secular work, and that resulted in teaching English to asylum seekers, and thus triggered the whole care side of looking after refugees.
Yes, it was a tremendous career change, and yeah, it was a bit scary at the start, but once I got into it, I found it very, very easy compared to what I'd been doing previously.
Something that I've always actually thrived on is change and new challenges, and so for me that was the sort of nectar, that was the food that fed me, and that was the force behind me was the fact that I was doing something new and exciting. And in the past, before I'd become a Christian, the various career changes I had were for me, but I knew that this was for God, and it was so powerful inside me that that's what propelled me forward.
I couldn't become a teacher. I'm too old. Or am I?
The youngest we've had is 18, and the oldest I think is 66. So it's really open to all ages, of international people too, because it's open to people who don't have English as their first language, as long as their standard is up to scratch.
All sorts of people become English language teachers. Some are 18-year-olds who finished their school education and are going to go overseas for a year or so before university. And then people from different professions who feel God's calling them to go overseas as a teacher, right up to retired folk.
I would recommend anyone to have a go at this in their retirement and become a missionary in another land at a time in life when you think, I've had it. You know, so go for it. That's what I would say. Go for it. Don't hesitate.
I couldn't become a teacher. I'm too young. Or am I?
I think I'm quite young to be director of a project like this, and I've been asked by the local government to work with them in teacher training, and I certainly think I'm really quite young to be in teacher training. I don't think age matters as long as you're doing what God's asked you to do. So I think that would be the key there. The key for me has been obedience. God said go, and I've gone, and I find He gives you what you need to do it. I think I'm at a good age. I'm still single, which is really helpful because it gives you the freedom to just up and go.
When I left estate agency and real estate and I moved into be a mature student and take the first certificate in teaching English to speakers of other languages, and I failed it, God showed me something. I'd always been good at speaking, and I'd always enjoyed talking and communicating. And He showed me something that even though I had a natural ability, it was actually only through His power and His strength and the Spirit working through me that I would be successful. And it's sort of humbling, really. And he said that I qualify the called, I don't call the qualified.
How would I meet people and share the gospel?
A Christian teacher, I think, brings maybe a different view. They can communicate that each individual is unique and that each student is loved because God loves them, and for many students that's a whole new idea.
To be honest, the Arabian Gulf is one of the most difficult areas to see people won to Christ. This is the very throne of Islam. It's the area where it originated, and you need to have considerable perseverance and a real heart of love and desire to see God break through on the long term if you're going to live and work out there and serve the Lord.
One has to be, be aware of the constraints within the teaching environment that you're in, and respect the fact that it's not the first thing they're there to do. The first thing they're there to do is learn English. But invariably, through social action, through all the extracurricular activities that go on, and for your very bearing as a teacher, for the fact that the Holy Spirit's in you and working through you, I always pray before I go into the classroom. I'm always continually pray for each student by name, and I've just found the results in that have just been incredible, because the relationships that build up of trust and of understanding between you and them.
Probably the most dramatic thing that spoke to the students was our actual relationship. Unfortunately, the Chinese people don't have good marriages.
It was very easy actually to share the gospel, even in the teaching, because you did get leading questions and you had to answer those honestly. They expected you to do that, and obviously one question led to another, and
Yes.
they are very intelligent people, and they think in exactly the same way that we do, and they want to know. They really want to know. And the harvest field in China and Asia generally is really ripe in that sense.
The thing that crossed the barriers was a sort of sense of humour about the way I dealt with discipline. And they responded so well that they started to ask me why I cared about the way that they behaved and why I cared about the way they were spending their life. And they said to me that I would have made a very good Muslim, but they realised that actually I was a Christian, and that they were so sad that they'd want to know more about, Christ and Jesus.
Last summer I was in China with a short-term team, and we found that the students, some of them had already started reading the Bible. They didn't know why, but they were reading the Bible, and they just wanted someone to come alongside them and tell them what it meant. So on that summer trip we saw a number of young students come to know the Lord.
A Swedish couple, who came to us from a mission organisation. They were working out in Mongolia, and they came to us because they needed a qualification in order to get a visa. So they did the qualification with us and went out back to Mongolia, and they saw phenomenal growth in church planting that they were doing there. They started off with 13 teenage girls for a Bible study and finished up with a church of over 1,000 people in a very short period of time, and they trained up national leaders to take on that church. So from humble beginnings of English teacher to see a fairly major church plant take place in a remote part of the world is quite incredible.
Is teaching English for God just about affecting people's souls, or is it important in other ways?
The organisation started with English teaching because asylum seekers were new on the scene, and the Lord very much spoke to us that He wanted us to care for these strangers in our midst, that actually it was in God's heart for us to do a good Samaritan type work. Here were people who'd been beaten up, who were by the side of the road, and we were to come and love them.
It's an amazing privilege to be able to speak into people's lives and help them in their quest for their fulfilment as a person in this world. Because English is a global language, it's become a key to people being successful and movement around not just successful materially, but successful as somebody who can interact with many other nationalities.
So we have all the tools of being able to live in our society, and we need to pass those on to them. One of the key ones has to be English,
So where could this opportunity lead?
Vision for the future is very simple. It's the vision we had for the beginning, and that was to see English teachers scattered all around the globe as God's people doing mission in key areas, as creative access. The growth in English language worldwide is quite phenomenal. Every non-English country in the world is presently recruiting English teachers. All you have to do is look through the paper and see adverts for countries that are closed countries, many of them open countries, but there are hundreds and hundreds of opportunities. And as an organization, for every teacher we train, there are at least 100 or more opportunities. And one of our frustrations is that we can't match those opportunities with the teachers.
I would really like to become an English teacher for God. What do I do now?
Well, the cost at our organisation, its International Training Network, is around about £1,000, and then on top of that we can arrange accommodation with Christian homes, and that's a very reasonable rate. It's the cheapest in town for accommodation. But you can do the training in other locations as well, in other organisations, non-Christian organisations, get the same qualification because it's a secular qualification. We're talking about $1,600, and the equivalent would be the same, €1,500, which is an excellent